thing before the zero actually. What the fuck? Jesus Christ. Welcome.
Dude, what is that? Welcome to Dialed In. What is this?
This is Zeddy the Yeti.
Holy shit.
Dialed in, dial in, ready to go. Dial things in, dialed in, dial in, dial in, dial in, just dialed in, dial in, just dial in, one channel, just dial it in, just dial in, dial in, ready.
Welcome to Dialed In. We've got the man, the myth, the legend, HD Moore himself, hacker legend, and now entrepreneur.
That's good. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no, super excited. You know, I think we've known each other for a long time. I'm based in Austin now. You're based in Austin. Been a big fan of your work since you released the original MetaSploit, and I've always kind of followed your fun hacking adventures. Now you're running a company, runZero. You're doing what you love, but it's also a business now, and you have a whole team and culture. And from what I understand, it's going really well.
It's going okay. It's been fun. It's my first time doing kind of the entire shebang from scratch, as opposed to starting as either an early employee or like co-founder. This is the first time where I really said I'm going to do it by myself for the first couple of years and do everything, and then try to build the rest of it from there. And it's been a fun journey for sure.
Yeah. Well, how was that going from when you kind of started off your career? I know from memory you were like breaking point at one point, right? So we're always like working in cybersecurity, and you know, I think the MetaSploit project like really kind of blew you up, and then there was a deal with Rapid7. Like remind us like how all that happened.
You know, so I started off contracting for the military through CSE, running at Sway to the Air Force back in '99 or so when I was still in high school. We still had people there, did a startup, and then, you know, successful startups at that point, GDI for a bit, Breaking Point. Then one of that Breaking Point had an offer from Rapid7 to buy MetaSploit. And then basically went over to Rapid7 to build that up as a product team, as a national commercial product, as well as open source. And that whole team was here in Austin, actually. So I opened the first two Rapid7 offices here in town, and now they're over in the Frost Tower. But that entire MetaSploit team, Austin group, basically came from that acquisition. Building on.
So it's not every day you hear I was writing exploits for the Air Force in high school. So what the hell? Like walk us through like how does one get hired in high school to write exploits for the US Air Force? Like, first of all, where did you go to high school?
All of them. So I went to 6 here in town.
Okay, in Austin, Texas.
Yep. I kicked out of a lot, and alternative school for a bit for the bad kids, and then into the last chance school, Garza, for the last 6 months of it.
Oh, okay.
I dropped out by 2 years too.
Okay.
But I was mostly just sitting like, apartment writing code the entire time.
Well, I can really relate to that. I barely graduated high school. My head was so into hacking that, I didn't do my homework. Sounds like we have some of that in common. Yeah.
I got lucky that a lot of my like security stuff I was doing towards the end of high school, they gave me credits for. So my English credits were like doing like a SANS talk, for example.
Yeah.
Things like that. So, but I was kind of in, knew all the hoodlums online, both IRC and DBS days. And then I was on Town Frack and FNet, and some random person out of the blue says, "Hey, you want to work for the military?" I'm like, well, Whataburger wouldn't hire me yesterday. And they literally hired all the crackheads in my apartment complex, would not hire me. And so I was like, well, I'll give it a shot. It can't be worse than Whataburger.
Shout out to Whataburger. They're like, this guy's too smart. We're not going to hire him. He's meant for me. Yeah, he's meant for better things. Yeah, well,
not at all. No.
Revisionist history here.
It ended up being a guy who was stationed in Germany at the time, and he was just one of the random hackers who was in the scene.
He was like on Ramstein Air Force Base, or
I'm not sure where he's stationed out at the time, but
it was somewhere.
He just mentioned he was like in the military in Germany, stationed out there. I didn't know his name. I still don't even know his name at this point. But he says, yeah, head down to Kelly Air Force Base and interview with these people and you'll get a job. I'm like, okay. So I took my hoopty truck that had no clutch, no AC, little like, Datsun 50 or something like that. And I drove that thing for like 2 years with no clutch on it. Dripping oil everywhere, all kind of fun stuff. So, brought that down to the base. Almost got shot at there. I thought you just drive through. I'm like, no, you need an S4 and all this stuff like that.
So wait, how do you drive a truck with no clutch? So you're just like in one gear the whole time?
No, you still just jam the gears in.
Just like.
Oh, but you have push start it. I went downtown Parallel Park, and you have to open the door, get out, Flintstones it, basically pull the whole truck out, move it out into the street, and then run a tilt it to get it going fast up, and then hit the starter on it, and then jam it into first gear before it turns off again.
I've done that, so that's why I'm laughing. I'm just trying to imagine that's such a cool story. And What was it like being a high school kid and working for the Air Force? Was it like a bizarre scenario for you, or did you love it? Like, kind of describe the experience.
It's comical because they paid me out of petty cash. They wouldn't let me know what project I was working on, but I'd immediately know what it was just by, they said, write a tool that takes this value out of the registry and then runs this decoding operation. I'm like, oh, you mean pull the password for all these keys? I can do that. Here you go. No, it's not a password. It's a key. Okay, sure, whatever. Another project was you want to take network packets. When you see a trigger, do something like, oh, I'm running a network backdoor. No, don't call it that. Don't call it that. So a whole lot of like them trying to have me write things that didn't want to specifically call it an exploit or a tool, but I knew exactly what the thing used for. Because I wasn't cleared, because I wasn't enlisted, I had to kind of work at arm's length over everything. So I worked remotely, and at one point they sent some general to my apartment here in Austin, which is a Section 8 housing. It was not a nice place. To stand over my shoulder while they tested out the system they called Chaff at the time, which was a bunch of like honeypot stuff that ran on the Air Force network to prevent people from like basically a bunch of honeypots to distract hackers. And I just ran like all the ADM tools in a loop and just shelled everything anyways, and started kicking them out and disconnecting them and killing their tools. Like, hey, stop! Hey, quit it! Hey, stop now! Hey, guys, no! Like, they thought the chaff would slow me down. It's like, no, to throw that exploit at every box. Like, I'm not going to spend more time on it. Just shell everything at once, right? So projects like that, they're a lot of fun. And
So somebody was like, General, you got to see this. We've got this like crazy hacker kid in Austin who's like building all this incredible technology. He's like, I don't believe you. They're like, yeah, we'll take you to him.
I think they're there to make sure I didn't do anything too bad to the servers after I broke it. So it was supposed to be like, okay, don't go any further than that. But kind of,
I got to put my eyes on this kid, make sure we can trust him.
Yeah, you always know when you meet like another hacker, because the very first thing they do when they type a command on a new system is put a space in the first character, so it doesn't end up in the history. Or my first command is always like unset hist file. So, and it's habit at this point, right? So you do like a job interview and you start seeing those types of things pop up. So in shell history, you're like, oh, this is actually someone's old school, did this before it was legal, basically.
Yeah. What year did you barely graduate high school?
I think 99 maybe.
99. Okay, you were 1 year before me. Cool. And we both grew up in Texas. I love it. What got you into hacking originally?
Being poor and bored. Computers are fun because you can mess with them, and I didn't have any money, and so I'd put them together from parts I found in dumpsters, and did a lot of dumpster diving as a kid, both for food and for other stuff, either finding things to sell or finding things to build. So at one point I had like all the parts for 46, and I was just missing like just the processor, and I finally got the processor. I put it in, I turned the thing on, I leaned over, and a freaking penny fell out of my front shirt pocket onto the board and shorted the whole thing out. Spent a year and a half trying to build this board and managed to destroy the whole thing in like 5 seconds.
No way. You would literally find PC parts by just like rummaging through junk and stuff.
Yeah,
and
literally jump in the dumpsters and just dig through it all and find whatever, or go behind the human health services here in town. They would always give away they put it out for destruction. I just go there and I'd take them all. And then, go through all the parts, build whatever you can, sell the rest. And yeah.
So was there any kind of influence or inspiration that kind of made you think, okay, this like hacking thing is really cool, and this is something a subculture that I want to like go down the rabbit hole?
I think when I got my first job and I realized how terrible everyone else was, like not as a bragger, but just like I was working with folks who there was no security training you could have taken to get good at this stuff. And so they put me into a network where everything was a sandbox with open NFS. And they're like, your user ID is this. I'm like, no, it's not. It's root. Want to see? Like, it's just one of those things where like the normal paradigm at the time of security, there wasn't all these hacking tools available to everybody else. It wasn't all this like tons of experience. Like you couldn't hire someone who's good at breaking into something who wasn't a criminal by definition at that point.
Yeah.
And so it was kind of a weird time in that sense. But yeah, it was kind of fun. It was very much like, wow, I've had this superpower that I thought was just me being a hoodlum.
Do you think that at that time that people saw you that way? They thought this guy's like a black hat, and like we can't really trust him, but we need him at the same time. Was there like this kind of bizarre just juxtaposition of like, he's a bad guy, but he's also a good guy?
Definitely depends on the customer. I mean, I think before I went in for the interview at the base, I had a like long mohawk, like Liberty spikes half the time, like just torn up clothes. And by the time I went down there, I'd cut my hair short and got the polo shirt on and pretended I was one of them and all that kind of stuff. But it was just kind of funny to see the transition. But then going into some of the really conservative customers in my first startup, a lot of credit unions, small banks, like they were scared to death with even like a password test, let alone like throwing an exploit.
Mm-hmm.
And for good reason. Like their MBIX host machines would just like crash, and then none of their APMs would work for 4 hours or they reboot it. So they had good reasons for why they're gun shy on it. But you definitely had like a little bit of like the air of mystery at the time. Everyone's like, we don't really know what this person does, but they're going to break into it and then show you how they did it. And it felt like magic then because there's no reference. There's very few materials besides like the FRAC magazines, info, blacklisted 411 and zines like that. There really is no information that you could use to learn this stuff. You just had to go do it.
Yeah, for sure. Most of us who kind of grew up similar age, like grew up with this stuff and got into cybersecurity early, there was no other way but like, IRC and some of these like very kind of subversive underground materials like FRAC and things like that. It's the only way to learn at the time. You had to kind of teach yourself everything.
And how are you going to practice testing a mainframe when you're a 15-year-old at your bar? You're not. You're going to find someone else's mainframe and you're going to test that, right?
Yeah.
So a lot of exploring the internet, basically. And that's kind of what got me into internet-wide scanning and doing kind of large-scale analysis, things like that.
Walk me through when and how you created MetaSploit. Were you already in high school working for the Air Force? Was this after that?
After that, we've taken some of the team from the Air Force job and started a company in San Antonio called Digital Defense. And we started being just a pen test, home assessment firm. Then we started building a product like everyone else does. We built a MSSP. We had a pen test in a box we'd ship out. And this is back in 2000, 2001 or so. So I built all the tooling that went on the box. So we ship out a box, we do our pen test remotely through it, we run a bunch of scripts. I was one of the more frequent Nessus contributors at the time as well. So I was a tech editor for the first Nessus book and then wrote about 130 odd Nazzle scripts back then. But part of what we ran into is the exploits we had were trash. There were all these like random one-offs we found on the internet that we had to modify and the shellcode was all mangled and nothing really worked right. And so we're trying to get our team to be standardized on tools. And right around the same time, Core Impact had just launched their beta. And we're like, hey, this is really cool, but we can't afford $25,000 a seat.
Right.
We're broke and cheap, and I'm getting paid $35,000 a year at this point. So it was more than my salary to basically buy 2 licenses there. And so I said, okay, well, pay item, this is awesome. I can't afford it. I want to go, work on my own tooling instead. So I went to my, boss at the time, like, hey, I want to go build this toolkit internally. It's just going to be, aggregating open source stuff, making it better. They said, no, just get back to work. I'm like, oh, okay. So I did it in my free time instead and basically worked in it nights, weekends for the next almost 13 years straight and just kept cranking away at it. And that ended up being the thing that I'm probably better known for is my side project, not all the other startups I was bragging.
Yeah, well, I mean, it was pretty prolific. It kind of changed the game. I know that maybe Core Impact was kind of the first, but it was like more commercial oriented. It kind of reminds me of like the original Snort story, like Marty and his college roommates ended up like creating the first IDS and, one of them wanted to like turn in a commercial product and Marty was like, no, I want to open source it. And they kind of like split paths, right? And it's kind of a legendary story of friends that kind of like got sideways and Snort ended up becoming like this wildly successful thing. And, you took the open source route and kind of watch that innovation blossom. You see the power of the community pile in and start adding on. When did the community really take off for you?
The thing about a community is like, it's a lot of, I don't want to call it faking. Yeah. There's a lot of faking. There's a lot of people contribute garbage. Someone sends you a patch that is something that's not even in Ruby or Python or whatever, just some garbage code that doesn't even compile.
Yeah.
And said, here's kind of what the bug is, figure it out. I'm like, okay. And then you spend 2 hours rewriting all the code, setting up test cases for it, creating VMs, doing all the software engineering side of it. Then you put their name on and you ship it. Sure. So a lot of our early contributions were folks who didn't really know, the language we're using for it, but wanted to be able to contribute. And we used to have a ton of work on our side helping them get the contribution where it needed to be because we had to maintain that thing forever.
Yeah.
We're not going to take crappy code. We also want people to contribute. So we had to be able to like rewrite everything twice.
Right.
So even
was the we like your team at Digital Defense or was
it we? It's mostly just me. And later on it was Escape and Spoonam joined the project in 2003-ish. And then they parted ways again by about 2008.
I remember you started off in Ruby. I think Ruby was like Perl first.
Yeah.
That's right.
And Ruby because Sync exploit stole all of our code, wouldn't admit it. And so we're like, we're just going to change our language. Good luck with that, guys.
Nice. And then Python later, right?
Never Python.
Never Python. Okay.
Okay. The main reason we never did Python is because both Core Impact and Community Canvas were written.
That's right.
We didn't want them thinking we're ever copying their stuff.
That's right.
1, we didn't need to.
Right.
2, their code sucked.
Yeah.
So it was, we're also full of ourselves in our 20s and we're like, this stuff's garbage. We're going to make our own thing. It's be better with flat jack and hookers or whatever. So it was very much that ideology. Plus there's a lot of what we did in MetaSploit was really pushing the boundaries for vulnerability disclosure.
Right.
We got so annoyed with Microsoft's inability to patch Internet Explorer ActiveX bugs.
What kind of became the standard for pushing out POCs, right?
Yeah.
That was one of the reasons why it probably became so popular is that it was just easy, that it was the ubiquitous framework of like, okay, I found a vulnerability. I'm going to publish a POC. Might as well do it through Metasploit and I'll get like more impact that way, right?
Well, so if you did it, if you had no standalone exploit and you want to change the payload from like reverse connect to a blind shell or create a user account, you'd have to go rewrite the whole exploit again or hard code it all into it.
Right.
So the great thing on MetaSploit is like it was all kind of Legos. You just write the exploit part, and then you can slot in any existing payload, module, encoder, IPS evasion tool, whatever you like, and all kind of magically stacks into it. So there's a way to let people kind of like, divide and conquer on the problem solving of exploit there.
No, I think it was amazing. My favorite thing, obviously, spoke to my inner script kiddie is whenever you introduce the concept of autopwn. I think for me, that was when shit got real wild.
I was so mad when we took it away, but it was broken. It was like fundamentally broken in a lot of ways.
People love the idea of like point and click, like something's automatically like doing something for me. That was like this product experience. I think I learned a lot from you is that people just love the idea of like push a button and it just like does something. I think MetaSploit really kind of went wild and took off when you introduced the autopwn feature.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of have to like, build the bridge for everybody else. You can't expect everyone to like learn the language you're writing in to be all great exploit developers. You have to make things easy for people to get into it. And the folks that you onboard that way eventually become great contributors, but you have to give them that on-ramp. You can't just expect them to show up knowing everything they need on day one.
Yeah, so in a way, like, running an open source project, like, kind of teaches you how to be a product person at the end of the day, because like you built this thing in your head, you're like, I want like as many people to experience and get value out of this. So you start thinking like a product manager in a way. You're like, well, what would be a feature that people would love that would make like this more valuable to more people, right?
Yeah, a lot of like, what's the visual impact? Like one of my favorite payloads we had was auto VNC. So it would compromise the node with whatever exploit you had. It would drop a VNC server on the remote side and then tunnel proc to your interpreter and then give you the full screen VNC node control automatically. You literally like run the exploit and there's a remote control desktop in front of you with nothing else. It was magical and perfect.
Yeah.
And my favorite experience of that was doing it on a Pentest one day and realizing I was on an ATM, moving the cursor around of some ATM screen on a Diebold at the time.
Could you imagine somebody who's like pulling out their cash and they're like, what in the...
Yeah, that stuff was fun. So I love it, like having that kind of experience, like you said, where folks can immediately see the result and they get to actually show off and kind of do the kind of, hacking the movie style approach to it.
Yeah, no.
Definitely try to take that account for work here. It's like, we try to like discover assets and network and exposure so well that you look at it and would just be like, wow, I didn't know any of these things before.
Yeah, that's where I was going to go with it is like, how did like that whole experience with MetaSploit like help prepare you for building a commercial product at runZero? Like, I'm sure a lot of those lessons learned and everything like really kind of built you up to this moment to make like a really killer product.
Getting a good sense for who the early adopters are for security tools was one of the best parts of working on MetaSploit. Is this pretty much all early adopters, knowing the mindset, like knowing what kind of risk people are willing to take. I could say like a large portion of the early runZero customers were also early MetaSploit users. And I've seen the same names for 20 years now. They're just nice people that, think it's cool, want to try it out at work, are willing to try it out in the work environment, even though it hasn't been proven elsewhere. So it's really cool understanding the kind of early adopter mindset. And then those folks are really good to get feedback from and then just keep pivoting. One thing we liked about MetaSploit is whenever someone had a cool idea for, it'd be cool if MetaSploit did this because about this problem, we're like, okay, do that. So we just kind of like constantly follow the demand, and that helped us build a product that, didn't get stretched too thin, but it also covered a lot of things that we wouldn't have known to go do ourselves. So when I was working on runZero, the hardest part for me early on was releasing it when it really wasn't ready. Like no one wants to release a product that's not ready, but if you keep waiting, like you're just falling behind. You're not going to get any feedback. So we started just pulled the trigger in March 2019 and said, okay, we got a beta, have fun. Everyone's like, what the hell is this thing? Is it a ping scanner? Like, I don't know. You tell me. What do you think it is? And so we started getting feedback like, well, it'd be cool if it did certs. It'd be cool if it did this thing. Like, I really wanted to identify this type of open database volume. So we started like following all that feedback, and then we ended up with a product that would just be amazingly good at telling you about everything that was on your network or off network.
Yeah.
And then we started doing the same thing with integrations. Customers saying, well, I need to know which machines are missing my EDR or aren't covered by my vuln scanner. And they started doing your security control overlaps and all the kind of fun stuff. And then more recently, we've been focusing on the exposure management side. So trying to understand, what's your biggest risk in the environment? Not from a take all your vulns and boil the ocean and say, here's the vulns that are most important, but throw all that garbage away. Say like, okay, your CVEs are worthless. Those don't matter.
Yeah.
Last part, if it's got a CVE, I'm not going to care about it around zero.
It must be really fun for you to build this product. It kind of reminds me of like going back and saying, okay, I'm going to take the original idea of the Nmap and like blow it up and make it amazing and like relevant to a business and not just like a low level tool. Right.
Yeah, and funny enough, Gordon Nmap or Fyodor at Nmap is actually one of our biggest investors.
Oh, that's amazing.
He was hanging out in the cabanas at DEF CON with me when we came up with the idea for the company.
That's so cool.
I love Gordon. He's awesome. I really appreciate his support. It's been great working with him over the years. And Yeah, he's fully supportive. Like I was complaining about how all the at the time IT asset discovery tools were complete garbage.
Yeah.
If you don't have a credential, they tell you nothing, and then you don't know about it because you have nothing to show for it. And so it's kind of like, well, I don't want to reinvent Nmap, but at the same time, we want to do something that's a little bit different than what Nmap does.
Right.
The way we do port scanning differently, the way we do fingerprinting differently.
Well, yeah, and that wasn't really designed to like protect and find risk of a business, right? It was more of a low level like network discovery tool.
Well, it's also designed to, like, it's the Nmap security scanner. So it's designed to find security problems. And so it sends a lot of traffic that's intended to elicit weird stuff.
Right.
Like the XMIS scans, the SNFP fingerprinting model. Like it's all the stuff it does technically that like some devices don't like. And it's
It's kind of built for penetration testing.
Exactly. Yeah. You're intentionally sending, intrusive traffic, right?
Probing.
The approach we're taking with runZero is like, we don't want to send any traffic that you wouldn't otherwise expect to see in the environment.
Sure.
So we want it to all look like normal background traffic that just happens to magically have great results.
Right.
So a really fun trick we did is we added a passive discovery engine a couple years ago. And even if you don't use our scanner at all, but you just take anyone else's scanner and you just run runZero as a passive sensor at the same time, we'll still give you better results from their own traffic.
Interesting.
Because we peel so much data out of the packets.
Got it. And passive discovery, not just operating system like POF, like just discovering anything like services.
Ports, bones, you name it,
Yeah.
firmware versions. I mean, we peel it all out. The cool thing is the same protocol engine that we use for active discovery is also what we use in passive. So we write it once and it goes both ways. Effectively, we're just taking our active scanner is effectively a passive engine that happens to send its own traffic, but it's effectively stateless on the back end. It doesn't really care where the traffic comes from.
That's awesome.
It's a neat toy in that sense. So
that's really fun. No, I love this stuff. When you built the company, how important was like open source to the core of what you're doing? Do you give back a lot of stuff to the open source community, runZero? How do you think about that, and how does that affect the decisions you make from a product perspective?
It's definitely changed. I mean, back in the early 2000s, if you were going to create a security company and you weren't open source, you had to get over a much higher bar to convince people that your product was safe. Especially for pen testing, right? They don't want to use a closed source pen test tool and not be able to know what it's going to do. So MetaSploit being open source was how we got adopted because no one would have trusted otherwise. These days, though, I mean, how many binaries do you run every day that you don't build yourself? I mean, tons. We're downloading all kinds of Go binaries, Rust binaries, using lots of closed source tools.
I'm running a Mac, so this won't hurt me. You just kind of get these ideas in your head, and it's probably unsafe to download and just run any DM you download online, but it's just, we've gotten so used to it. There's just so much software.
Yeah. But we've kind of gone away from the point where like all security tools have to be open source. And so runZero is kind of my first attempt to like build a closed source product first. And so the core of it is closed source, but we do a lot of open source libraries and other kind of peripheral stuff. Like we have patches, we put back into Go Packet library and Go into the SNP library, a lot of different like other sub libraries using Go. We'd love to do more open source stuff. We just kicked off a project that combines the Census's ZMAP project, or the Z crypto package. We basically took that and merged that back into Go mainline and have a modern version of it now that speaks everything from like SL3 all the way to TLS 1.3, has all kinds of cool features. And the Shambler work we did last year with SH protocol decoding, we now put all that into open source tool you can use as well. So we have kind of a custom malicious SH and TLS stack you can do all kinds of crazy stuff with. And that allows you to find bugs and do fingerprinting you can't do using the standard tools. That's kind of the big open source project I'm doing now in the background. We also have some open source fingerprints we put out for a while, but that kind of backfired on us. We had a product manager at a large competitor email us and saying, hey, just heads up, I just quit. We've been stealing your stuff for this number of years. Every time we put a fingerprint out, we copy it to our tool that he gets to. Like, well, that's not fun. So I told our team that, like, well, we don't really want to put our fingerprints open source if you're going to defeat your competitors with it, right? So
that's a big challenge, and this is playing out right now in the AppSec space that I'm in with SimGrep, like a popular open source SaaS. They have a commercial business, and I guess a lot of their competitors were using their open source technology behind the scenes, building a wrapper around it, and so they changed their license and then got a lot of flack from the open source community. Hey, that's not nice, but open source is a really difficult business. There is very little protection you have against a competitor popping up and using your underlying tech, and licensing can help, but it can't really 100% protect you.
And we ran into that with MetaSploit too. Our two commercial competitors that were the big ones we cared about both had an embedded MetaSploit into their product too at one point to say, no, we do that too. And we still kick their butts. We still end up taking over the market. And that's because like our commercial product wasn't just open source core. We had a separate product we built from scratch. So the MetaSploit deal for me was earn-out based. So I had 4 years from the second we signed the contract to get some percent of the revenue with the thing we ended up building and selling. That was not what was already there. And so that means there's a fire in your butt to go build a product, sell it, sell the crap out of it, and then, scale it up.
Yeah.
So we kept the framework as open source that we kept contributing to like normal, but then we built an entirely different product.
Right.
We're not trying to like cash out on the MetaSploit framework, really trying to like cash out on this brand new thing we're building, which we're the best people at building it because we know the code so well.
Right.
But our competitors can use it too, and they did use it. So our take was like, yeah, our competitors are copying our stuff. We're still going to move faster than them, and we did. And at the end of the day,
For sure.
just being quicker at using our own code was what helped us win that market.
Yeah, well, that's basically my take on it too, is that at the end of the day, the fastest company or team to deliver innovation and value is going to win out. Whether you're in the open source domain or the closed source domain, how fast are you delivering new innovation and value to the end customer? And how happy and successful are you making that customer at the end of the day? That's what matters, right?
Yeah, but it is depressing if it's your open source project and someone else is doing it better than you commercially. And no one likes that. And that's what happens with OpenTofu, with OpenGrep, all that, right? You've got folks who are saying, why are we contributing to these competitors? It's like, well, that maybe shouldn't have been your business model.
Right.
Then again, like I absolutely loathe the fake open source licenses, the SSPL, kind of like semi-commercialization stuff, or even folks who start a new open source project and I think GPL first, because their intent is then do a rug pull later on and commercialize the full license. Like,
right.
These days, everything I put out as open source is all MIT or BSD because it's either open source or it's not. But it's not really that it's something else.
What was MetaSploit was BSD or?
Yeah, it was Perl Artistic, which was actually BSD back in the day.
Mm-hmm.
And then we dual licensed. We did a commercial license briefly for about 8 months just to give us a buffer after doing the Ruby rewrite. Right. So that other folks can copy us to get off the ground. But then we're back to being basically MIT dependent.
Yeah, I think every open source project I ever did was also MIT or BSD license. It's just like the most kind of purist and fun.
It's actually open source as opposed to like, a future rug pull. Or one of my friends had a GPL license project that they worked on for years, and they had an offer to license it from a commercial entity. I said, great, this is $10K. I'd love to get $10,000. That'd be great to feed my family, things like that. And they realized they couldn't do it.
Yeah.
They had to go get every single contributor that ever contributed any line of code to their project. They had to get a contributor license agreement and a copyright assignment because it's GPL, or they had ripped that code out for licensing. So GPL backfires on folks too. Even as the main project lead, it's really bad for you as the project owner to take any contributions from as GPL without a CLA.
So the lesson for those entrepreneurs that want to take an open source model to their business is if you're, from what I think I heard and what I think I agree with, is open source it. Don't play any games with the license. Put it out there. If you want to have a separate commercial fork that has more capability or additional closed source code, do that, but don't interfere with your open source code at the same time. Like, put out what you want to put out, leave it to the community. If they want to copy it, run it, fine. If you want to add additional IP as a commercial product, do so. Do that on the commercial side. Keep it closed source. That's what you did at Rapid7 very successfully.
Well, I think open core is tougher to do now than it used to be. If you're trying to open source just the core of it, but that's where you're putting all your time and effort. You don't really have time to build a commercial product separate from it.
Right.
So that's really a headache. Like, how are you going to allocate your own team's time if it's all going into a thing everyone else can copy? Well, what are you doing, right? So you really have to have a nice, solid open source thing you can, curate. But then you have to have a very different product you're putting all your real time into. So I also wouldn't want to call it open core so much as kind of like side by side. Like, you've got a bunch of code you're using over here that's public, and you've got this totally other thing over here that provides all this, not just additional value, but like a different value concept.
Yeah, I think that the trade-off is that you can build a user base and community a lot faster through open source, but are the risks and trade-offs worth it in the end? Spicy take, like, would you do a open source business model again in the future?
Probably, but I don't know what it would be yet. Like, I don't really like the idea of open sourcing your fingerprints only, or your just signatures, your rules, whatever you want to call your content. I also don't really like the idea of like the open core model these days. So I think my goal is just to, at some point, retire and then just work in open source for free and not have to worry about the business side of it.
I think the world would love that. That would be fun. So
that's my life goal, right? Just to go back to writing code and not have to worry about whether anyone's paying for it.
Yeah, I like it. And is that really retirement? So
it is for me.
I love it. That'd be fun. I've always really been a fan of the fact that you're always hacking and you're always working on something cool, whether it's doing some cool security research or, building some fun things. I feel like it's innate with you. You can't stop doing that stuff. And I feel like that's one of your competitive edges, right? What kind of cool stuff are you working on these days?
Well, if I'm stuck in meetings all day, I need to go write code for a couple hours to get my brain reset at night. So that's more of a necessity than it is anything else at this point. So I'm still writing code every day for the main product, writing signatures, rules, things like that. But yeah, one of the cool things we're working on now is the concept of external attack surface management usually is, okay, we'll find your domain names, your IP ranges, we'll scan all that stuff, we tell you what's exposed. And maybe we'll go a little more creatively and say, here's a web page that has your logo on it or copyright headed where it might be yours. But all of that is it's missing everything else, right? It's only like the top down, outside in kind of perspective. What we're doing instead is we're saying, okay, as a defender, your superpower as a defender is your internal stuff really well. You have an internal inventory, internal fingerprints from all your stuff that is in your environment that no one else can see. So let's take that data and let's use that to do a better job of doing external attack surface management using your inside data. And the trick to that is we'll come up with unique fingerprints for every internal asset and then look at the entire internet ocean of data and say which other devices in the entire internet have the exact same fingerprint. And if you get it accurate enough, you can say this device exposed here, even if it's on an IPv6 range on a telco through a cellular a broadband modem, right? So you can find exposures you cannot find any other way because it's not attribution based anymore. It's based on like specific fingerprinting of a given device. And some of the ones we use, the really easy ones are like TLS certs, right? Same TLS cert on remote desktop on the internet internally, and you got a problem. Your internal box is definitely exposed, or you clone that machine. SH host keys are another example, but they're often widely cloned. If you see more than one machine internally with a host key, one on the outside, it's probably the same machine. If you see 1,000 machines on the outside and one on the inside, it's probably a clone machine, right? Or hard-coded firmware, etc. But you can take that a lot further. You can get into SMB version 3 engine IDs. You can look into things like SVT buids. There's always like temporal fields you can leak out of a protocol that's going to be unique for that asset, at least for some period of time.
Right.
If you can take all those fields from the internet and all those fields from internally and just like match them together, you find crazy amounts of exposure that nothing else finds right now. And you're getting to, and you take advantage of the superpower that the defender has, which is knowledge of their own internal network.
I think it's really fascinating. The network fingerprinting is kind of like blown up. I feel like in the last couple of years, there's a guy who released a couple of specs for some kind of newer network fingerprinting. He's now created a company around it. I think he's trying to sell licenses. I'm not sure how I feel about that whole business model. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah, I forget the name of the project. So you're doing something similar. You're fingerprinting in the network packet. You're looking at host services, whatever kind of juicy information, and coming up with a library of fingerprints. I'm assuming it's proprietary. Do you offer that as like a closed source companion? You mentioned that people can run it with other network scanning tools and use that capability to fingerprint things.
Yeah, we don't license our fingerprints out. And I'd say the big difference is the fingerprinting for us is like core to our product. It's not something you can like really take out because it's not just a bunch of rules. It's also all the heuristics that go into it too. So like, for example, we can tell you that a device is Oracle Linux, a particular version, without any information whatsoever besides an SH banner. And that SH banner doesn't say anything about Oracle in it. In fact, the SH banner will just have a generic OpenSH, 9.1 banner. And we can still tell you it's Oracle Linux. So we do that by the process of elimination. We go through and say, okay, in the entire world of Linux distributions, how many of them have this banner? And how many of those have this TCP window size and MSS available and have this TCP IP fingerprinter running the kernel version? And what about this particular architecture set? So we start bolting together like fingerprinting of the kernel remotely with fingerprinting of just the banner. Even without like a vendor specific tag on the SH banner, we can tell you the only thing it could be is this thing when it's all said and done. That's a really hard thing to go, commercialize and share because the rules get really complicated. You're the whole scope of the world to do it. So I would say the gentleman you're talking about, what I don't like about his model is he's been pushing for open source projects to adopt these fingerprinting libraries while he's patenting and putting active patents out for it.
Sure.
And so it feels like a little bit of a rug pull on open source where you get them to adopt your fingerprinting hash or whatever happens to be. And they say, oh, and by the way, if you have now incorporated all these commercial products, you owe me all these patent licensing fees.
Yeah, it's kind of like a kind of patent trollish kind of model, right?
Literally patent troll, because unless you're actively doing the fingerprinting work, you're a non-practicing entity, which is the definition of a troll. I would think that particular business model is being just patent trolling, even though there is some cool research happening. The way it's being deployed, especially with the push into open source for what's a patent covered protocol, I find to be deceptive and kind of rude.
Yeah, that's kind of the thought that we had when we looked at it. We're like, it smells a little fishy. A lot of different ways to commercialize open source work and support it. Getting a bunch of patents and then trying to build a model around that's where, may rub people the wrong way.
It's a time bomb, right? Because you don't get the patent in the first 5 years anyways, right?
Yeah.
So it isn't until it's out of the entire ecosystem. So even if you trust the person who filed the initial patent, do you trust who acquired him?
Right.
You not do that? The same gentleman worked at Salesforce and was responsible for two different hashes, different fingerprinting algorithms there, like JARM and JA3. Both those are patented and covered by Salesforce. Like, do you really want Salesforce owning rights to your product royalties? I know why Salesforce wanted to patent it, but whatever you think of the folks who invented this technology, you have to keep in mind that they're not going to be the end owner of it.
Well, don't get me started. I'm not a believer in software patents. I have software patents myself, and I don't believe in them at all. I think they're garbage. And if you've ever been through the process of getting a software patent, you know how garbage they are. You can literally just write gibberish on a page and get a software patent. And most of them are pretty much gibberish on a page.
The tough part is investors expect them, right? So we've had a problem at runZero. I'm not a fan of them. So we try to take like, what's the thing we're doing that's super unique that no one else is going to have this problem but us? We'll patent that part.
Yeah.
No one's going to be doing this thing anyway because we already do some crazy thing in the corner.
Yeah.
So we've been looking at like, how do we have patents that are very representative of what we do, but they're not deceptive or, a general innovation that anyone else is really going to run into. So we have like a stupid port scanning trick. Like we've got patents already filed, a lot of fun stuff, but effectively we found a way to like port scan through staple devices without causing those devices to fall over the United States.
That's pretty interesting.
And it's tough. You can like scan through a VM NAT-D and not kill your NAT-D service, or scan through a crappy old, low-end Palo Alto VM or the low-end SLVPN. You have to do a bunch of like really gnarly, weird stuff for the network layer to do that. And it's really non-intuitive. You have to send a lot more traffic than you would otherwise if you're trying to not basically avoid that. So it's in no one else's best interest out there to send more bogus traffic as part of being a port scan than us.
Right.
Because of where we're deployed, that's something we wouldn't patent in. So it's not two-faced that like I hate patents on one side, but we have to on the other. But if you're doing a startup and these investors are expect you to patent your stuff.
Well, I think if you have like an actual real novel invention and it's not something that's super obvious, then I can get behind it. But a lot of patents I feel like are just like kind of, we're doing something, let's kind of create a vague description of how this is different and try to get a patent for it just so we have it. I just kind of get silly. It's like, what is the whole point here? To make an investor happy? It's like, is that the right motivation to get a patent?
No, at one point IBM had more lawyers than engineers.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's still true post Red Hat, but
what does that say about IBM?
They got a lot of lawyers. I gotta say, like IBM has shipped me down at previous companies for patent royalties and something that had nothing to do with them. Yeah, I said, your software says it has this word in it. And I said, yes, but we don't do what your patent does. Like, we don't care. We want this much money from you per year or we're going to sue you anyways.
I think it's kind of a good indicator to like how you're keeping your edge and leading innovation in the world. And you look back on IBM now and it's like, how are they compared to the IBM of 20, 30 years ago? It's like the respect isn't there for a good reason, right?
I mean, we're seeing a lot of companies like Salesforce, IBM, a few others say, we're not going to hire new software engineers. We're going to have less software engineers to replace them with AI.
What do you really think about that? Is that just like a low-key way to do a layoff?
Of course.
Yeah.
I mean, it's exactly what it is. We're going to reduce headcount, but we're going to blame AI for it.
Yeah.
I mean, they should blame AI for it because they spend all the money on AI and it's stupid, but not you should blame, their software engineers for it, right?
Sneaky.
That's my take. Like folks who say, oh, we're going to do, yeah, you might get some efficiencies by using, Copilot or something like that with your tooling, but someone's got to make the decision at some point of what you're building, why you're building it, and what the rules are for it. And, most of the programming is sitting there twiddling your thumbs, staring at the screen, trying to figure out what the hell you're going to write, not the writing part.
Mm-hmm. Have you gone down the AI rabbit hole yet?
I'm a hater. Yeah, I've been trying to try it as much as I possibly can to understand what I hate well. So sure. Mostly what I find useful for is if you can automatically validate the results some way, then it's sure, use it because it doesn't hurt you to try it. So one of my favorite uses for AI is fuzzers. Because if, there's a great paper by Google where they use their AI stuff to generate new test cases that weren't being covered by the normal coverage-based buzzers like AFL. So it found unique test cases. You can find other ways. And they can automatically validate it because it said, did it compile? No, okay, then it's bad. Okay, it did compile, now try running the test case. And so basically, you didn't have to know whether the AI was right or not. You just had to know whether you got a valid test case when it's done.
Right.
So cases like that where it doesn't take human subjective review to know whether it was correct are great.
A little bit more intelligence than the old rules-based way of doing automation in the past, right? Yeah, it has a little reasoning capability now.
The challenge, so I tried using the reasoning stuff recently, and the problem I have is even when let's say I tell it to rewrite a bunch of XML. So I was doing a giant fingerprint update the other day and 10,000 lines of XML, and I was like, hey, AI, make this less annoying for me. Go replace all these fields here and there. Do a search and replace for this stuff because I didn't want to figure out the regex at the moment. And it all looked great. And then it wasn't until I went and ran my unit test against it that I realized it was all wrong. But it looked plausible. It was almost right. And so it ended up costing almost more time afterward to go find all the cases that it was like was mischievously not right. Yes, to fix it. And that's the hard part. Like if you already have a great unit test, you already have a way to validate it, it's awesome. And if you're running text, blurb, whatever, sure.
Yeah, I think we're kind of in the like learning and understanding what the pitfalls and caveats are. And then you understand that it's like, okay, if I know I can, not one shot everything and I have the patience to give it context and let it do its job. But for somebody like yourself, that may be too slow for you. You're like, fuck it, I'll do it myself.
A really easy example is like I basically had a typo in one of my 10,000 line XML files. And it was on every chip line. There's a stupid typo. It was like OS device versus hardware device. I said, okay, Copilot, replace this to that. It took like 30 minutes to go through the whole file.
Right.
I could have just searched it twice, but I was like, let me just see what it's going to do. Just watch it chunking away there in the corner, just the slowest developer ever. But
yeah,
I mean, I think where it shines is when folks don't have a strong programming background and they just want something working really quick. Like Photoshop generation is great. Or if you're picking up, you're a programmer in one language, but you don't know, let's say React very well.
Right.
No one knows Rust.
Yeah.
No one will ever know Rust.
No.
It is unknowable. No, I'm sure there are people out there who like Rust, but those are the people who, will tell you that when you first meet them. I like Go because it's small and stupid, just like me. So I feel like I can understand Go. I
don't think anybody's going to buy that.
No, I'm not smart. I just spend more time on it. My goal.
So, back to what you're working on now, like what's the next kind of big innovations for you?
You look at the entire world of like vuln management and exposure management right now, it's basically just layers of filtering garbage. So you start off with a big fire hose. Let's say you use an EDR as your vuln management tool. It'll look at your local installed applications, match that against a big database and spit out 1,000 CVEs. What does that tell you? Almost nothing. Like you don't know whether it's exploitable, you know if they're reachable. And let's say you're using a vuln scanner, kind of a traditional, like authenticated over the network scanner, like that PCI requires. Well, any device it can't authenticate to, it's not going to tell you very much about, but it won't tell you enough that you know that that's a problem. And so as we're moving to more, beyond corp style, zero trust stuff, you're getting into situations where authenticated vuln scanners can't talk to most things because they can't authenticate to them in the first place. Your EDRs are only installed in part of your infrastructure, part of your systems, or you may have multiple tools based in different parts. And all they're really reporting is local software installation issues, not real novel vulnerabilities. So that's one bucket. Then you look at like how are people actually getting owned? And it's through a 0 day in Palo Alto that didn't get fixed for a week. Like Thursday night comes around and there's a new 0 day and Palo Alto says, have a great weekend, y'all. We'll see you next week. And you say, well, what do I do? Like, well, turn off your VPN. Like, but I can't do that without using my VPN to shut it off. Like, you can't even access the system. And they say, okay, well, just put another firewall in front of it. Like, well, how do we protect that firewall? Well, we put a checkpoint if you were Palo Alto in front of your, whatever, right? So it's one of those things where the things that are actually causing people to get breached right now are all those edge devices, the things people don't know about that don't have EDR, don't have authenticated scanning, are kind of black boxes to all the tools we use. And so we're looking at that. We've been doing that for a while at runZero. How do we go about helping people identify those types of exposures so fast that they don't have to do anything else? Like within a minute of that, advisory coming out or proof of exploitation, where all your Palo Altos are in the world, and you can do whatever you need to do to mitigate them without having to wait for a product update for the scan. So we do that by
faster source of truth. And
we've got all of that. So we're just querying the existing data. We effectively turn a lot of corporate environments into an internal shodan in a lot of ways. We already have all the data sitting by, you quickly query it, you know exactly where all those devices are the second you look for it, not having to wait for a product update or things like that. So we're taking that approach kind of all the way down. We're saying, let's just throw away all the stack of CVEs in the bottom layer. Let's start from the top, say, what are people actually using to break in? And how many of those don't even have CVEs?
Isn't it ironic that arguably one of the world's most famous hackers is now admitting that it's the security company's own equipment that's opening the doors for compromise these days?
It's amazing. You look at the big.
It's kind of embarrassing, isn't it?
Yeah, almost all the big breaches in the last 2 years were related to some sort of security or IT security.
Juniper, FortiGate, Palo Alto, the list goes on and on.
All the anti-pulse secure stuff. I mean, even the file transfer tools were meant to be secure file transfer tools.
Yeah, I don't think this is like NSA backdoors go wrong. I think maybe in like a very small number of these cases that might have been something related. But at the end of the day, I think that maybe it's like the arrogance of we're a security company and we're building these things and maybe we don't have the same standard. We just assume that everybody's doing the right secure coding. I don't know. How does it even happen? I mean, because it's black box. There's not any scrutiny going into it from the general public.
Well, I mean, what happened is we started off with security companies being started by security people. And then it became a good enough business that everyone wanted to start a security company. I had a couple folks on LinkedIn reach out last year saying, hey, we're thinking about starting a security company. Can we talk to you real quick? I'm like, yeah, sure, whatever. Like, okay, so we're in fintech right now. We think cybersecurity is a hot sector. So how do we start a security company? I'm like, please don't. Just stay away. Like, do not come into this pool. So you have a lot of companies that create security products, but they don't have any security DNA.
Yeah.
They don't care about it. They don't know about it. Like even at runZero, it's really tough to hire people with security backgrounds who are also engineers or also salespeople.
How many engineers you guys have now?
Not too many. I think we're 14, like that.
How many of them are you okay using AI?
Maybe half. I think we have a bunch of curmudgeons for sure. I mean, we're going to say, here's some tools you can use. Here's the bounds we can use it in. Use if you want to.
And you feel comfortable, yeah.
Yeah, we're going to see how many people riot at saying even that you're allowed to use it, let alone that you should use it. But I mean, I found cases where it's helpful, but also a lot of cases where it's causing me more pain and suffering. And
well, I doubt anybody's going to find any security vulnerabilities in your products.
We hire a firm every year and they always find stuff. So, I mean, it doesn't matter how good you think you are or you think your team is, someone else screws up. One of the surprise bugs that got us a couple years ago, I say got us because our third-party vendor found it, we fixed it, was the S3 library for Go had a directory traversal vulnerability in the SDK. Now, there's no path traversal in S3. There's no path traversal in our wrappers that call it. It was just the Go SDK itself was doing a normalization of the path to make it a dot slash. So the glue layer between us and the surface was actually had its own directed traversal vault separate from everything else. So we thought we were filtering everywhere we could. And then all of a sudden there's a direct traversal that takes outside of the path that we thought was be locked in because the freaking SDK was doing it. So now we can go blame Amazon for it. So that's the kind of bugs that we run into. We also just make dumb bugs like cross-site scripting, SQL injection, things like that.
Yeah.
We do our best not to have them, but of course you find them, you fix them, you hire people every year to go through it all. Keto is like, we always do a full source code audit. So whenever we're hiring a third-party assessment firm, we say, here's all of our source code, here's all of our infrastructure, have fun, look at all of it. Like we want you to find as much as you possibly can. And then we try to fix it within hours of the reporting.
I find it interesting you prefer that method versus the bug bounty method. Is that just too wild for you guys, or because you're a closed source software, it doesn't make a lot of sense?
We've never gotten a valid bug bounty report.
Interesting.
To date.
So you do both approaches.
I mean, people send them to them we don't technically have a program, but people send us crap all the time and it's always garbage. It's all like your SPF header has this thing like, we know intentionally it's like that, or your cross-origin policy.
Is your main product shipped as a SaaS or?
Both. We're on dollar-wise, we're probably 50-50 on on-prem versus SaaS.
Okay.
Customer-wise, it's usually weighted towards SaaS for sure, towards total counts.
So you do bug bounty on the SaaS side, and
we don't have a bug bounty either way. Like, if people reach out and try to sell us bugs in the product, and we finally ask what they're talking about, and they say it's this thing, like that's stupid, we don't care.
You're like, this is not real.
Yeah, we hire good people for that kind of audit work. Like we don't need bug bounty stuff. I mean, occasionally folks will say this seems weird, it looks like a bypass, or permissions, like something that's not like earth shattering. You'll say cross-org permissions in this place are a little weird, things like that. But for the most part, it's either customers saying we want this to work differently permission-wise, or it's our third-party firm finding things that like we just missed. No matter how much tooling and work we use of the product, you always miss something small, and they're really good at finding that. We also try to hire the same firm every year, so there's always like continuity. They already know what they looked at last time. They can diff it. They say, here's what we looked at before. Here's what changed. Oh, here's the new feature. Let's go hammer that one. So it's really nice having like a multi-year relationship with an audit firm that's able to like pick things right back up and go figure out what we screwed up since it saw us last. Mm-hmm. And this is a team I used to work with. So they love.
I was about to say, based on your networking experience, you probably know where the good ones are.
I used to work there.
There you go.
It's a good team. These are Tradus partners. We hired them every year and they've been great at just
Tradus partners. Got it. Shout out to Tradus partners. You guys are good.
But I love it because like, nothing like you're working with your ex-coworkers to really have a motivation to figure out your problems.
Yeah. I'll find a bug in HD's code.
Exactly. Yeah. It's great. And we appreciate them. They're great at it. And we do our best to turn out fixes like same hour as we report them. So typically by the time we get a Sev 1 report or high security report, the patch is already out before they finish writing it out.
So still to this day, AI aside, you can't beat a really good human determined to get the right outcome.
Well, we use all other tools too. We do static scanners, we got linters, we do fuzzing. We've got a machine that sits in the corner grinding away on all of our protocols all the time, trying to find bugs in them. So, I mean, we do all that stuff too, but the third-party audit stuff just finds so much more than anything else. And especially a multi-year relationship with the same firm, they're able to just go much deeper and understand the context in it, as opposed to saying we had to relearn your entire code base every time.
That's awesome. Well, I could probably talk to you all day, but want to give you a chance to wrap. So how can people get in touch with runZero and see all this amazing innovation that you're building? Like, what's the best way for them to get in touch with you and get engaged?
Sure. Yeah. Easy way to try it. They just kick the tires on our product, runZero.com/try. We have a free tier. So if you want to use it in your home lab and have fun forever, just poke at it. Up to 100 devices. And if you need a little more, just ping me. HDM@runZero.com if you want to reach out directly. I'm on our support alias. So if you reach out to support, I'll see it come through. One of our team will pick it up. All of our support goes to our engineering team. So if you reach out to us on the engineering side, you either talk to a CSE or an actual like, product engineer. But either way, you're talking to someone who knows what's going on. So we take all the stuff really personally. We really care about the product and the quality. We really like feedback.
Sounds like you really care about your customers. You're a customer-centric company.
Yeah, we do pretty good with we've had the same customers now for like 4.5, 5 years in some cases, almost since launch. So it's been good to see those relationships continue. We had our first 5-year renewal, first 5-year contract end and then get renewed again, which is kind of fun. So it's interesting to be in a spot of a startup where we actually had a 5-year, multi-year actually go all the way through to the end and then renew them again as a customer.
That's an impressive milestone.
Yeah.
And we're doing the party together at RSA, the Hottest Innovators Party. So people can come there and meet both of us.
Yeah. And fun time. I'm looking forward to the other folks showing up there too. And it's a great place. Like, I like the, these types of parties with smaller companies like ours, you tend to get a little more face time and talk.
I think, of course, there's a time and place. People want to go to the like big money, like wild shows like Palo Alto Bag, CrowdStrike. I think people find it fun to like really like hang out with like some of the more like innovative grassroots underground stuff, and innovative startups are a lot of fun.
Yep. And you probably know this best. I mean, you see kind of a lot of your customers are be the early adopters too.
Yeah.
Or being a vendor in the software, in the security space and being a startup, you talk to like the people who take the most risks, who are kind of leaning into the latest technologies. And so it's just a really cool vibe. People show up to be seeing some of the people that you want to know about who are running the coolest security programs.
Yeah, they want to geek out with you. They really care about what they're doing too, right?
Yeah, it's not just like, can I get another steak or another bottle of wine? It's very much like, I care about the outcome here.
Yeah, nobody gets fired for buying Symantec kind of mentality.
Yep.
Well, dude, this has been awesome. Thanks so much for coming on, and I appreciate it. It's been fun.
Thanks, Greg. Yep, thanks for having me.